But above all, Ruth Bader Ginsburg taught us the power of a single word: no. She taught us that when we see something fundamentally wrong with our society or our surroundings, we stand up and say, no more. She taught us that when Goliath tells us yes, it is our duty as David to look him in the eye and defiantly say no. She taught us that no is a complete sentence. And that is why I will be reading excerpts from one of her most powerful dissenting opinions, a situation in which Ruth Bader Ginsburg herself boldly and proudly said no and encouraged all of us to follow suit. These are excerpts from Burwell v. Hobby Lobby Stores, Inc., a case whose results many of you will remember shook the country in 2014. In it, the court ultimately determined that the Religious Freedom Restoration Act, or RFRA, permits a closely held for-profit corporation to deny its employees the health coverage of contraceptives to which the employees are otherwise entitled by the Federal Patient Protection and Affordable Care Act of 2010, based on the religious objections of the corporation's owners. Justice Ginsburg dissenting. In a decision of startling breadth, the court holds that commercial enterprises, including corporations, along with partnerships and sole proprietorships, can opt out of any law, saving only tax laws, they judge incompatible with their sincerely held religious beliefs. Compelling governmental interests in uniform compliance with the law and disadvantages that religion-based opt-outs impose on others hold no sway, the court decides, at least when there is a, quote, less restrictive alternative. And such an alternative, the court suggests, there will always be whenever, in lieu of tolling an enterprise claiming a religion-based exemption, the government, i.e. the general public, can pick up the tab. The court does not pretend that the First Amendment Free Exercise Clause demands religion-based accommodations so extreme, for our decisions leave no doubt on that score. Yet in the court's view, RFRA demands accommodation of a for-profit corporation's religious beliefs, no matter the impact that accommodation may have on third parties who do not share the corporation owner's religious faith. In these cases, or in this case, thousands of women employed by Hobby Lobby and Conestoga, or dependents of persons whose those corporations employ. Persuaded that Congress enacted RFRA to serve a far less radical purpose and mindful of the havoc the court's judgment can introduce, I dissent. The ability of women to participate equally in the economic and social life of the nation has been facilitated by their ability to control their reproductive lives. Congress acted on that understanding when, as part of a nationwide insurance program intended to be comprehensive, it called for coverage of preventive care responsive to women's needs. The exception sought in this case by Hobby Lobby and Conestoga would override significant interests of the corporation's employees and covered dependents. It would deny legions of women who do not hold their employers' beliefs access to contraceptive coverage that the ACA would otherwise secure. Until this litigation, no decision of this court recognized a for-profit corporation's qualification for a religious exemption from a generally applicable law. The absence of such precedent is just what one would expect, for the exercise of religion is characteristic of natural persons, not artificial legal entities. As Chief Justice Marshall observed nearly 2 centuries ago, a corporation is an artificial being, invisible, intangible, and existing only in contemplation of law. Corporations, Justice Stevens most recently reminded, have no consciences, no beliefs, no feelings, no thoughts, no desires. The First Amendment's free exercise protections, the court has indeed recognized shelter churches and other nonprofit religion-based organizations, but until today, religious exemptions had never been extended to any entity operating in the commercial for-profit making world. The reason why is hardly obscure. Religious organizations exist to foster the interests of persons subscribing to the same religious faith. Not so of for-profit corporations, Workers who sustain the operations of those corporations commonly are not drawn from one religious community. Indeed, by law, no religion-based criterion can restrict the workforce of for-profit corporations. The distinction between a community made up of believers in the same religion and one embracing persons of diverse beliefs, clear as it is, constantly escapes the court's attention. One can only wonder why the court shuts this key difference from sight. Thank you. And where is the stopping point to the let government pay alternative? Suppose an employer's sincerely held religious belief is offended by health coverage of vaccines, or paying the minimum wage, or according women equal pay for substantially similar work. Does it rank as a less restrictive alternative to require the government to provide the money or benefit to which the employer has a religious-based objection? The court, I fear, has ventured into a minefield. By its immoderate reading of RFRA, I would confine religious exemptions under the Act to organizations formed, quote, for a religious purpose, engaged primarily in carrying out that religious purpose and not engaged substantially in the exchange of goods or services for money beyond nominal amounts. For the reasons stated, I would reserve the judgment of the Court of Appeals for the 10th Circuit and affirm the judgment of the Court of Appeals for the 3rd Circuit. In sum, with respect to free exercise claims no less than free speech claims, your right to swing your arms extends just where the other man's nose begins. It is worth noting that it was the 5 male justices who made the majority decision in this case, a case which immediately affected the lives of thousands of women and has the potential to negatively impact countless more. The only 3 female justices, along with Justice Stephen Breyer, dissented. Naturally, this brings to mind one of my favorite Ruth Bader Ginsburg quotes, which I will leave you with tonight. People ask me sometimes, when do you think there will be enough women on the court? And I say, when there are 9. Thank you.
Thanks so much, Bailey, for that. We wanted to encourage and give some space and time for members of our group here to come up and share some thoughts and reflections briefly about Ruth Bader Ginsburg and what she meant to us, because Ruth Bader Ginsburg fought for all of our rights, and her death, her loss, has touched us deeply in many, many different ways. This is a space for us, for our community, to acknowledge that, the very personal impact that this has on each of us. So I'd like to encourage anyone who has some thoughts they'd like to share to come up and stand right here and line up and let's be together on this. We need that now more than ever.
Hi, I'm Peggy Dimmick. I actually was just telling some people that our very first thing that Indivisible did, okay, here, so I should stand it up. Okay, the first thing we ever did was after Charlottesville, and there was about 30 of us, and it was just Yuri with no mic, and wow, look at this. There's 3 mics, the sound system, this pavilion, it's just amazing. Anyway, I don't normally speak at things like this, and the voice of judgment in my head is so much louder than my heart. But today was different because I had to talk about my mom too. And Ruth Bader Ginsburg has always been this monumental vision of strength in my life. The other one was my mom, who died in 2007 after 15 years of cancer. And the second time she was diagnosed, I said, I was at that age when, cynical seems wise, and I was like, if I ever got cancer, I wouldn't do any of this. And I looked at like all the stuff, the chemo and the radiation and the dry mouth, and my mom was like, honey, you don't do it for you. You do it for the people you love. I'm doing this for you. And Ruth Bader Ginsburg had 5 cancer diagnoses over 20 years. And it's not fun for anyone, and she didn't fight it for herself. She fought it for her family and her husband and for us, because she did love us. And this is a really dark time, and it is darker without her. And sometimes it's so hard to even be a flickering, tiny, tiny candlelight, but no amount of darkness can ever be darker than the smallest light. And when we look at our candles tonight, I hope you realize that. And when you're really, really struggling, you're like, I can't do it anymore. I can't even stand up and flicker the tiniest candle. Remember that you're doing it not for just you, but for the people you love, and the community you love, and the country you love, and millions of people who need to see that you haven't given up. They need to see your little light. And it really reminds me of that song that actually my mom did teach me about, This Little Light of Mine. And that song used to be a civil rights song. And they would sing it when they were being arrested, and they would sing it in the jail cells. And all too recently, they sang it, led by Colonel West. They sang it at the Unite the Right in Charlottesville. And they started singing This Little Light of Mine, and all the Nazi voices were drowned out. And Colonel West said, it was like they could not compete with that much joy. And we're not going to let the darkness win. And we're not either.
Okay, hi everyone, can y'all hear me okay? Yeah? A little louder, oh boy, okay, I can do that. I am absolutely petrified to be standing here right now, so I apologize if my voice shakes or if I mess up. I wrote something this morning on the complexities of grief. My family has some relatives that practice Judaism, and I wrote something that reflected on a funeral I went to when I was 9 and how it reminded me of now. When I was 9 years old, my cousin died. It was my first time being so close to death, and I remember forgetting the look of her face. It's ironic, remembering how you forgot. You see, Jewish tradition means there is no prior viewing of the body. It's a way to honor the deceased. My last memory of her would have to be one of when she was alive and breathing. At the time, my young brain felt so angry. How could I honor her when she was running from my mind? How could I honor the presence of a woman when her body was not before my eyes? I was only 9 years old, and I could barely remember the look of my own eyes when I was not standing before a mirror. Jewish etiquette calls for family members to each take part in filling the grave with dirt. With each scoop of earth, I saw a piece of myself being buried. The shovel was handed to me. It was way too heavy. My father helped me hold it while my trembling hands raised it over the grave, before turning it over and dropping the soil down. I had nightmares for weeks. You're probably wondering why I chose to tell this story at a vigil of all places. And if it brings you any peace, I am also a little curious as to why I felt so compelled to share it with you. I think it has to do with the fact that at the time, I felt that a door had been closed on me as I tried to chase my cousin's memory. It was as if her image was cut from me. Now, however, I think often about how much I appreciate these traditions. Her memory was a blessing for me, not an offering. I was required to lash onto the things I remembered instead of the look of her closed eyes. I was expected to remember how her hands felt when warm, not cold. When I heard of Ruth Bader Ginsburg's passing, I thought about her granddaughter and how she took over the harrowing task of writing down Ruth's last wishes. In that moment, I believe she probably felt similarly to 9-year-old me, her tears creating a hazy last image of her. I also think of our own. Ruth Bader Ginsburg was in no way perfect, and it would be unfair of us to believe that she was. What she was, however, was a woman. One which fought every day until her last to keep us safe from fascism. The irony of a Jewish woman doing so does not desert me. We should remember her for how she lived and for who she was, not just for the things that she gave us. When we dwell on what she gave us, we lament over her absence of strength now. We cry for her ending and its consequences that we face because of it. In reality, we should not have been expected to lean on her to keep the sanctity of democracy alive. She should have been allowed to rest. We must let her rest now. While our hearts may break and our souls may be dampened, tomorrow we must wipe our tears and fight. We must fight because someday we will all be preparing to take our final breath. And there will be little children who may fear for tomorrow like we do now. Someday, 9-year-old me will be shaking with a shovel in her hand. I want her to wake up the next day feeling like light. May her memory be a blessing, and may a revolution be on our doorsteps. May our children sleep tonight, nightmare 3. Thank you.
Friday night I was watching my daughter's soccer game and feeling very proud of her and feeling very proud of all the young women who were so strong and pushed each other out of the way and kicked the ball down the field, and remembering that I didn't have that opportunity. There was no sports like that for me when I was that age. And in the middle of the game, I got a phone call from a dear friend who is an activist working in Los Angeles, and she was choked up and crying. She said, I wanted to be the first to tell you so you didn't hear it some other way, but she's dead. Ruth Bader Ginsburg is dead. She said, and you're the one who gave me this shirt. It's the one I'm wearing that now we can't see in the dark, but it's the one I'm wearing of Ruth as queen. And I knew that it would matter to you. And I said, I'm so glad you called. And we commiserated on the phone, and she said, well, I can hear the game, I'll let you go. That night, I got a text from someone else who said, I know you would care about this because you're the one who gave me that pin of her lace descent collar. So I knew you would care, and I'm thinking of you as I mourn. And we do mourn, and it makes me think about my mother who worked for women's rights for decades, and as she began to fail in her 80s and had Alzheimer's, she couldn't remember much of anything specific. We toured her room at the assisted living complex, and she didn't remember any of the paintings that came from our house. And she would say, where did that come from? Well, that was on your wall, Mom. Oh. And then we came to a framed picture of Eleanor Roosevelt. And she said, I don't know what that is. I said, oh, Mom, that's a picture of Eleanor Roosevelt with her autograph on a written thing in the frame. Oh, who was that? My mother said. Well, she was married to a president, Franklin Delano Roosevelt, but she did a lot of great things on her own. She went down into the mines and worked with the mine workers. She did a lot for women's rights. And my mother said, well, good for her. And I think that's, if my daughter is ever taking me around the room, I will say that too.
Hi, my name is Michelle Laban, and I'm not exactly sure what I'm going to say. I didn't prepare anything, but when I think of the contributions that Ms. Ginsburg made for my life, I think of my mom. My mom still refers to herself as Mrs. Randy Scholl, because that was the identity that she was given when she was newly married in 1966. That was the identity that she was allowed to have. 5 years after I was born, in 1974, financial disparities made it that she had to go to work full-time. She was able to find a secretarial position, which she was able to do because of the contributions that Ms. Bader Ginsburg made to allow women to work outside the home. Of course, she didn't go back to work until after she had already had her 3 children, so that she wouldn't possibly disturb that company's schedule. I remember when I was 5, my father gave her a microwave for Christmas because she was still expected to do all the work of a mother and a worker. But as we grew up, she trained me and my 2 brothers to make sure that we could all cook, that we could all do the laundry, that we could all mow the lawn, that we could all paint the house, that we could all, whether man or woman, we could all do the same thing. And my father actually supported her. He would cook. He would do a lot of the things around the house that needed doing. She wasn't trying to be a radical feminist, but what she was trying to maintain her family. And because of the contributions that Ms. Bader Ginsburg made, she was able to do that. And as I grew up, I noticed that none of my other friends' mothers did that. And I noticed that she was special and that I was getting something that not a lot of my other friends had gotten, and that was an introduction to what real feminine, a real feminist is. And she was never prouder than the Mother's Day that I graduated from Stevens College in Columbia, Missouri, which is a women's college, women's private college, and was able to go to work as a graphic designer in the communications industry, doing anything that I wanted to do. So, thank you, Ms. Bader Ginsburg.
I'm Michelle Rasenko. I think many of us are feeling hugely overwhelmed, and sometimes that sense of being overwhelmed can lead to paralysis. Sometimes I turn to poetry, and this is a poem. I'm going to read a poem called In the Steps of RGB, and it's written by Rosemary Watola Tromer. And it comes from a piece of her inspiration was a quote that the documentary filmmakers, when they were making the notorious RGB, one of the things Ginsburg said, which is real change, enduring change, happens one step at a time. So let me take one step right now, one step toward respect, and give me the strength to take another towards clarity. And though my feet might feel like stones, let me take another step towards justice, and another towards equity, and another towards truth. And though my legs may feel leaden and slow, though someone else might step on my toes, may I inch towards forgiveness. May every step be a bridge, even enough divisiveness. And as I go, may I find joy in the stepping, grace in the edging towards great change. And if there is little joy, let me step anyway, then take another step, and another, and another.
Good evening, everyone. I don't have any notes, so I apologize in advance. My name is Lana Stowe. I am the mother of 4 children. I have 2 daughters and 2 sons. My one son and my teenage daughter is here with me tonight because I think this is a very good time to show them and teach them and be a part of something bigger than ourselves. Let me tell you a little bit about myself. Like I said, I had 4 kids, and for the better part of 30 years, I was a single mom. Ruth Bader Ginsburg fought for me, and for every person here tonight, and for countless others. And it is important that I teach my children to stand for what is right, to know your beliefs. Don't be afraid to speak. I don't believe I have ever spoken in public in my life. But right now, I'm thinking it's pretty important. We need to continue her work. We need to continue the fight. We don't want to go backwards. We don't dare go backwards. She would never forgive us. My 21-year-old daughter has a 2-year-old daughter, my grandbaby. She's going to have another little girl next month. It is essential for me to communicate my need, because right now I have a burning, nauseous fire in the pit of my stomach, fearing what is to come for the children of my legacy, the girls of my legacy particularly. I have fought long and hard all my life to try to be a strong woman. I know my mind, and some might say, gee, Lana, you're a little outspoken, but I don't think that's a bad thing, really. If it's right, stand up for it. And this is what we need to do now to honor her. My daughter, the mother of my grandbabies, has said to me, thank you, Mom. You have shown me what it takes to persevere. You have shown me, as an example, how to live your life, being fair to others, having a large heart, caring so much, but especially being strong. You have climbed so many mountains, Mom. You have won every time you went to battle for your children, for yourself, for your job, your education. And I'd like to think that there's a little bit of Ruth in every single one of us. So I think as of tonight, I thank my daughters for being the beautiful, strong women they are, and I thank my sons. I raised them to know that no means no. That is essential. And I don't want to bore you completely, but I did sit down with my 82-year-old mother this afternoon, wanting to know why I was so upset, and I did. I cried. When I heard of her passing, I felt like something had just dropped upon me. I felt so heavy and so sad, until I realized that we can do this. She would be proud of us. And my mother now understands, and after 82 years of being a conservative Republican, I do believe my mother is going to flip sides after our little chat. Thank you very much. Anyway, I want to leave you with, we all have our part to do. Don't be afraid. Don't be ashamed. And if someone wrongs you, stand up to them. Don't let them get away with it. And please, for the love of God and Ruth and everything that's good in this world, vote in a few weeks.
Good evening. My name is Dan Feehan. I am seeking to represent Southern Minnesota. Thank you to the organizers for putting this event together. 2020 has shown it is hard to still find community, and this is us showing it can still happen, especially in a weekend like this. We all know how our Fridays ended, but I wanted to share a quick story of how my Friday began. If anything to have a takeaway from tonight, I want you to remember three things. We have hope, we have agency, and we have urgency. My Friday morning began just down the street from here. I got a chance to vote. My wife Amy and I, after the boys went off to school, we brought our 10-month-old daughter Maeve with us. It kind of worked, it kind of didn't. Maeve was, she ended up taking the little tool you take to lick envelopes and tried to eat it. But by the end, we achieved it, and it was incredible. It's the most powerful experience I've ever had as an adult ever since I turned 18, because it leaves you so hopeful that you've done something in the face of challenge. And while I had a chance to vote for some great candidates, I want to tell you about who else I voted for. First person I voted for is a farmer who's in the southeast corner of our state and who's going through a Chapter 12 bankruptcy right now. Living on a multi-generational farm, this is the worst time of their life. They are working harder than ever, and what they shared with me is that I didn't change, the world around me did. They felt quit on, they felt hopeless, and they felt like nothing was going to change. The second group of people I voted for on Friday, there's a family in Rochester with a 12-year-old who has a pre-existing condition, a severe physical disability, and they require in-home care 7 days a week. And about a month ago, this family had a healthcare worker come to their house, and they came to their house while they were sick. After they left the house, that healthcare worker then tested positive for COVID-19. And for this family, it was terrifying. They had to quarantine one parent downstairs with their child, another parent upstairs with the rest of the children, waiting for the clock to tick by in the hopes that COVID-19 didn't pass on to them, and thankfully it didn't. I voted for them, but I also voted for that healthcare worker. Because when they asked that healthcare worker, "You were sick, why did you come to work?" And their response is heartbreaking. They responded, "I always go to work when I'm sick." They didn't choose to go to work, they had to go to work. They could not miss a single day of work in the middle of a pandemic. The third person I voted for on Friday was my daughter, Maeve. She's 10 months old. I think about the history of Justice Ginsburg. I think about her life. I think about her entire life as a fight up into her dying breath. And I think about my daughter. Because some way, shape, or form, my daughter is going to learn about Justice Ginsburg. That's a fact. And the hopeful side of me wants that to be through a history book. And the idea of reading about what Justice Ginsburg's life meant for equality, among so many other things. But the urgency with which I voted with Maeve in mind was the idea that my daughter discovered who Ruth Bader Ginsburg was because she had to retread the same steps in equality that Justice Ginsburg did during her life. And so with the same urgency, I voted for my daughter. Thomas Paine said in the times of our revolution that the times had found us. And 2020 has shown us I wish this was a night that we could grieve and grieve alone. But unfortunately, my friends, we can't. We have to grieve and we have to fight at the same time. The times have found us. If that has not hit you yet, let it sink in now. The times have found us and we can grieve. We must grieve, but you must fight all the same. It's not as hard, but harder. Because the people I voted for, they represent not just a fraction of the types of people that Ruth Bader Ginsburg fought for her entire life. The idea of economic equity, the idea of health equity, and the protections for pre-existing conditions, and most importantly, the fight for equity and equality in gender. I was heartbroken Friday night, but I remembered how my Friday began. And I hope if you have not had a chance yet to vote, I hope your tomorrow begins with that chance to vote, because that is how you begin to fight. And more importantly, you find people in your life who don't believe their vote matters, and you convince them otherwise. And you tell them who you are voting for, who you are fighting for every single day. That is what she would want. She could have quit so many years ago. She could have quit, but she did not, because the fight was not yet over. And it has continued, and it has found us, because the times have yet again found us. So take heart with that, and leave with these three things once again in your mind: hope, urgency, and agency. Thank you.
Good evening. I'm a little nervous about this, but at times of such great importance as this, I believe I need to say what's right, what's important. Dan was saying is we have hope, we have urgency, and it's up to every single one of us and all of our friends and allies to get out there and do whatever it is we can do to turn this state and this country blue again. 2 years ago, lots of years ago, I'm a campaign worker and I like to do door knocking. That's my favorite, because I get to talk to people and see them face to face. This year, it's a whole lot different. Now we're on phones, and I know a lot of people are like us at our house. If you don't recognize the number, you don't pick it up. So it makes it a little tougher. But Ruth Bader Ginsburg was a giant. She may have been, a family relative in Denmark expressed this to me. She said that Ruth Bader Ginsburg was small in stature, but she left millions of heavy footprints around the world. And I just wanted to share something. Our son lives in London, lives and works in London, and as soon as I heard on Friday night about Ruth's passing, I texted him and our daughter right away. And Matt sent back, put it on Facebook, went to bed last night thinking about our night at the movies on Christmas Day 2015. Rest in peace, RBG. He didn't come home for Christmas that year. He went to the movies, some science fiction thing, I think it was. And about 3 seats down from him was Ruth Bader Ginsburg sitting there. And he thought, do I take the picture? Do I just stick the phone out there and, you know? Well, he did, and we're all very glad he did. And I just noticed this evening as I was looking at the picture closer, she's going into a bag, and Matt said, you know, she was rattling some stuff around. She brought her own candy and treats to the movie. And as I looked at the bag, it's the diva. It's Ruth Bader Ginsburg with her diva crown on the bag. So, she was a cool lady. Thank you.
Hi, my name's Emily Falk. After I finish my undergrad at Memphis Davis, one day I'd like to go to law school. And the reason why I would like to go to law school, there's a lot, but one of the biggest ones is Ruth Bader Ginsburg. And just the example that she set, like literally the precedent she set as who she was as an individual and who she was as a Supreme Court Justice. And my mom texted me yesterday morning, and she said, "The world lost one of the strongest women yesterday, Ruth Bader Ginsburg. We continue to be strong for you. Share our strength with others and support one another." I tell law, and RBG said this isn't my mom, she's not a lawyer, she's a secretary. I tell law students, if you're gonna be a lawyer and just practice your profession, you have a skill, very much like a plumber. But if you wanna be a true professional, you will do something outside yourself, something that makes life a little better for people less fortunate than you. And I said, "Mom, I'm sad and I'm really scared." Because when I found out that Ruth Bader Ginsburg died, the reality set in is that the Supreme Court of these United States was currently discussing whether or not adoption agencies could discriminate against same-sex couples on the basis of religion. And the reality set in that because Ruth Bader Ginsburg has passed away, that I might not be able to be a parent one day. I'm 20 years old, and that shouldn't be a fear that I have. But my mom told me to have faith and believe. We're all so privileged to be sitting here. Every single one of us, myself included. Ruth Bader Ginsburg dedicated her entire life to looking outside of herself and to using her skills to help those who are less fortunate than she is. And that is what we're all called to do in some way, shape, or form. We have to step out of our mind, body, and soul and just get it done. It's about more than voting. What are you going to do after you cast your vote on or before November 3rd? What are you going to do? You can't just do one thing and be done. In a time of such sadness and despair, we cannot let any kind of revolution or any kind of progressive action pass along with RBG. There is so much hope in this world, and we need to cling to that, but it's more than the hope. It's looking inside of ourselves and doing something with the hope. It is taking action, and we can never stop. And no matter how rough it seems sometimes, no matter how hard the reality is that you're faced with, you need to keep going, because that's what Ruth would do. Thank you.
I'm going to keep this brief. My name's Beatrice, and I live in Mankato. And a couple years ago, I started a job at UPS, and when I started there, I was the only woman working loading delivery cars, and now we have a couple of other girls who work there too, and I just, there's not a day that goes by that I don't think about women like Ruth Bader Ginsburg and those that have come before her that have made it possible for me to work in a place that maybe in the past was primarily considered a man's job. And so I'm grateful for that opportunity to be employed there, and also for the opportunity to just be able to get an education and to have the opportunity to be to be independent and to be able to help care for my family. And so I just wanted to come up here and just express my gratitude for Ruth Bader Ginsburg and for the women and men who have come before her and before us that have fought for the rights of equal employment and equal pay, and for all the things that they've done for us, and just super grateful for that. And I have this desire to do something, and I think a lot of that has been inspired by people like Ruth Bader Ginsburg. And so I just want to say go vote, and thank you, Ruth, wherever you are, if you're listening.
Hello? Hi, my name is Sam, and so we're all here to mourn a life, but we're also all here to honor and celebrate one. But more importantly than that, we're all here to support each other through this. And I just wanted to take a second to talk about people who aren't here tonight, who are just as hard hit by this news as we are, because I'm sure a lot of you are already familiar with the CDC report that 1 in 4 young adults and 1 in 10 adults has seriously considered suicide within the last 30 days. And we all just got quite possibly some of the worst news we could have possibly gotten. And a lot of people are struggling with that right now, and not all of them are going to be able to make it to events like these where they can see that support to each other through a time when we could all really use some. So I'm not here to share like a super personal story about Ruth Bader Ginsburg. I just wanted to say, look out for each other, including those of you who weren't able to make it here. I know you all probably know someone who would have loved to come here but couldn't make it for whatever reason. Just check in with them. They could probably really use it. I don't have anything else to say. Thank you.
I'm Keani, and please forgive me if I struggle through this a little bit, but I was just texting with my mom and was telling her about how I was here and how happy I was to be here and be around people who I knew were filled with love and were supporting the change. And I told her that they had come around and asked if people had wanted to talk. And I did want to talk, but I was a little scared. And she told me that Ruth Bader Ginsburg was a brave, strong woman. So you need to stand up and be a brave, strong woman and speak. And so I came because I'm a freshman at Gustavus right now, and I'm in a class where we're focusing a lot on community and change. And we've been talking about how change comes from the people. It doesn't come from the top, it comes from within the system. And as America, our great country, we're supposed to be by the people, for the people. And we are the people. And we need to stand up and continue Justice Ginsburg's fight for the next generations to come. Because she stood up and did so much for us, along with countless other women and countless other leaders who have brought us to this point. And as someone said earlier, we cannot go backwards. We have to go forward. And so I'm just here to say that we must continue to fight as the people.
I hadn't been planning on saying anything because I can't stop crying, but I had to come up and just say briefly that you've probably all seen the little meme going around on Facebook that says, scientists believe the first person to live to be 150 has already been born. And the tagline under it was, please God, let it be Ruth Bader Ginsburg. I told that joke to a customer of mine last week and he chuckled and then he said, yeah, I don't know who that is. So I just wanted to come up here and say, please let's educate the people who don't know who that is. And let's tell them what she was all about and what she stood for, and let's continue her legacy. We may be ruthless, but we have to be ruthless going forward in educating and supporting. As I said to a friend of mine a few moments ago here, I am so tired of liberals bringing bubble wands to knife fights. I am sick and tired of this, and I am ready to fight. And please fight with me. Thank you.
Hi, can you hear me? Okay, hi, my name is Jill Hildebrand, and I'm here up here, unplanned, in memory of my mother, Catherine Ann Cullen, who lived in the Nicollet Hotel for 10 years, lived in an alley quietly as a poet. December 26, 2018, right after Christmas, our mother was diagnosed with acute lymphoblastic leukemia. We didn't know it for a few days, and when we were in the hospital at St. Mary's in Rochester, we thought she had lung cancer. There was a mass in her lungs. And we said, we were reading on the internet about lung cancer and people kicking lung cancer. We're like, Mom, Notorious RBG kicked it, you can too. And she was like, really? And she got a little excited for about a day until the diagnosis was pretty grim. And we knew we were going to be taking her home to pass away in her apartment at Nicollet Hotel. During the time we were in the room thinking we were going to talk to palliative care, take her home, they came in to talk to her, to tell her about, what the prognosis was. And our mom made the decision to not have any treatment and said, I'm 71 years, I've lived a good life, and I also don't want to live 2 more years under Trump. And so her very astute, very professional care team all just started laughing and snickering, and her nurse lost it. Later on camera, we have our very classy mom, who actually, my sisters, when they said I was going to come up here, they said, please don't swear. And I won't, because our mother was classy and she had filters, but she did turn to the camera, flipped it off, and said, get that effer out of office. And I know she would be welcoming the Notorious RBG wherever they are now. But about a month ago, we found a poem. We're working on a chapbook called Notes from the Alley of our mother's work. And she had written a lot of political poems after 2016. We actually think Trump killed her. And one of her poems was about her beloved friend Teresa Song, who many of you know. And it was seeing Teresa come out of the co-op. And she saw Teresa with arms full of ingredients she was going to use to make a recipe. And in the poem, she said, with her ladle and her cookbook and her ingredients, she was going to use her weapons of mass construction. And I love that. And I hope each of us, in the spirit of my mother, in the spirit of the Notorious RBG, use your weapons of mass construction with your voice and vote.
My daughter,
is a 17-year-old freshman at Hampshire College in Amherst, Massachusetts. And she knows that we're here tonight, and she asked me to share what she posted on Instagram yesterday, or Friday night, actually. I don't even know what to say. I am terrified. There are so many Supreme Court decisions that could be easily overturned if Trump gets a justice on the court before he leaves. Did you or your family rely on Obamacare to keep you healthy? You may lose the insurance needed to protect you from the pandemic and other health issues. Are you a person who likes spending time in nature? You may lose the ability to enjoy the beauty of clean and healthy air, water, land, plants, and animals. Are you a person who is at higher risk of being killed by police? You may lose the safeguards in place to protect you from unnecessary violence. The checks and balances system is no longer functional. The legislative branch bows to whatever Trump says. With a Trump justice, there would be a 6-3 conservative majority over the judicial branch. Republicans would have complete control of the government. The point of the United States government is to represent everyone. 39.66% of registered voters identify as Democratic. 29.09% identify as independent. Only 28.97% ident as Republican. So why are the numbers in our government not reflecting the numbers of voters? I don't know the answers. All I know is that I'm really scared. I can't vote, the thing that has the most power over what happens. I can't choose what my future looks like. I can't take control. I can't affect anything. So please, if you can, please think about what you stand for. Do you stand for hate and bigotry, or do you stand for love and human rights? Ruth Bader Ginsburg, may her memory be a blessing. May it spark a revolution.